welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to talk about how to get started. It's amazing how many questions I get about, well, that's great, but I've tried it and it doesn't initialize, or I don't really know what I need to do to get started in something like this. And it's actually very simple. So today, we're going to cover some of those startup options. And we'll take a look at what Warp can do for you to get that started, as well as maybe some other LLMs. So without further ado, let's get after it. Now we're going to start with a basic structure. So first thing I'm going to try to do is, let's go ahead and do an init. Oh wait, the command's not there, right? I mean, well, why does it tell me everywhere to do an init on my project? Well, the project doesn't exist yet. There's no code, so there's nothing for it to analyze. So there's nothing to fill in the warp.md file with. But there's a solution to that. So let's go ahead and let's generate a warp file first. Okay, so I think this pretty well defines what it is I want it to do. So, it's not as easy as just saying init and have it guess what it is you're going to do, whether it's Python, .NET, Java, whatever. But in this case, I'm telling it specifically, create the warmd file for me, and I want it to use Java, the version 21, and then here's some of the open source technologies I want it to verify or utilize. So let's see what it does. All right, so it looks like it's completed that task. So let's go take a look at what the file looks like and what it generated for us. So from here, we can see that it told us the structure of the Java code, gave us some sample of the dependency template. So this is going to tell it what it should utilize as far as dependencies, how to build it using Spring Boot. So it's given us quite a bit, and it's giving it some guidelines around how to process commands against this project. And here it's defined some of the application properties. These can be utilized for startup and user password, how to set up the Docker file, how to run the Docker compose. So it's done quite a bit for us here. And it basically tells it, here's how I want you to confine your requests and what I want you to do to assess those requests. And you can see that it showed the best practice, telling it to do Java 21. So basically what I wanted it to point out here is that it's done a good job of telling the system how to react to prompts and what it should do. So it kind of gives it some gating and boundaries around what it will do when you ask it to do something. And it gives you a great starting place to go in, and you can now manipulate it. You can change it however you want. And it's a document that's going to continue to grow as you build out your project and you realize what you might have missed in the initial construction of this MD file. Now let's look at how we set it up using the init command against a project that already exists. So I'm going to go ahead and move into Alpine Advisor. If we look at Alpine Advisor, there's a lot of stuff here. You'll notice that there's a ClaudMD file, but there is no WarpMD file. So at this point, this was something I had done in Claude, but this is where init comes in. So you'll notice now that if I go in here and I type in init, it's now here. I now have the ability to initialize or index the code base. So this is something that people often think is going to happen by starting a new project. So now at this point, it's actually reading the code base and generating a warpMD. All right, so now let's go take a look at what it generated from an existing project. So it found that it was a React application. Talked about Vite as the build system, set up a directory structure, looked at the routing system, data layer. There you go. So that's the difference between what or when to use initialization. All right, so what you saw was us going through just a quick startup and how to get started with Warp. As you can see, it's fairly simple. And it's not a lot different than if you're using Claude Code or any of the others, right? If you want to start with some, agent setup or rule setup, then a lot of the times you have to generate these files yourself. And that's expected. So now that you kind of understand some of that stuff, hopefully it'll make your journey with getting started with this tool, or any other tool for that matter, a little easier and a little more intuitive. You can't really expect an initialization to understand what you're thinking. So you kind of have to tell it. So hopefully I laid out kind of how to get started, and that'll help you get moving a little faster. So until next time, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.